Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Java with Ali and I am Ali and I am going to talk to you today about Scrum and why it's so important, why agile development is so important, and also why documentation is important, not for other people but for you. So firstly, I'm going to talk about Scrum as a agile software development tool that can be used, and a brief overview of what it is, and then I'll talk about documentation. So I have been working on it, I will say on and off, because I went back to study for a bit and I did other projects since 2004, so it's not today or yesterday, and I have noticed a trend across certain organizations that use Scrum and those who do not use Scrum. And for me, not using Scrum is the same as basically development with waterfall instead of being flexible. So what I mean there is, if you are using Scrum and agile software development, one, you're more flexible, and two, it is a great tool for communication among your team members. Now, I would say for the places that I've worked in that have not used Scrum and stand up. So firstly, let's talk about Scrum and what it is. So Scrum is basically a software development, agile software development framework that can be adopted into an organization as a way of managing an project. And it comes from the word scrum in rugby terms. So if you're a rugby fan like I am, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. We have certain players in the team. We have two locks at the front, they're called, one tight head and one loose head prop. And then we have our props, I meant to say, and then we have our hooker in between, and then we've got two locks, which is our 4 and our 5, and then we also have 6, 7, 8, which are all part of the scrum, and that is your rugby scrum. So let's say if you had 8 members in your team, in your software development team. Now let's just say that I worked in an e-reader team with only myself and 2 other developers. That was pretty tight knit when it came to the development team, because there was only me and 2 others. So we had a very good run of things. We knew what we were working on. We had our own features that we were going to work on ourselves. In that case, it didn't really make too much sense to have Scrum. But as our teams grew larger in other organizations that I've worked in, where we had bigger projects and they were across multiple continents, then we're talking using Scrum as a tool. So for example, and please also look up the definition of Scrum. I'm just taking examples from industry for myself. So for example, we would have what's called stand-up meetings. Now, our stand-up meetings, you can take a version of Scrum where you have a stand-up meeting and you can say, what are you working on? What things you'd like to share? Are there any roadblocks? And the purpose usually of those meetings are to figure out what you're working on and what roadblocks you have, and if there are other team members that have worked in it before, that they can jump in and say, hey, I've worked in this before, let's figure out a way to do it, because we work as a team. Now, there are other times as well where we use like agile software development. So you work in sprints, they're called. So you develop certain epics or features or stories, depending on if you're using Jira or this type of software tool as well, that you have 2 weeks development and then you have a retrospective. So you look back on what you can learn and you evolve and you continue to grow, and they're done in cycles or stages as you're going along. So every single time you have a sprint, you have 2 weeks. Then you have some slack time as well that you can work on either features that you are interested in working on, or you also have some slack time that you can work on some bug fixes or some other things, and basically there's not much, there's more kind of a time that you can evolve and grow as a team as well. You can also fit in some more team building exercises and things, and every pronoun that should be used in this type of team should be we. Even if you're the sole developer working on this, it should be we. So I know some interview techniques. Certainly, I can only speak from here in Germany because I have been sent documents from different people that have said, hey, these are tips for interviews and stuff, and I take a good interest in that anyway, just to keep up with the industry. And they have said the opposite actually, but I would like to qualify that as, if I'm working on a team, I will always use the pronoun we, even if I am the sole developer in that team working on that feature, working on that complete thing myself. I have worked on now on features by myself solely, but because I'm not the only person that's come up with the feature and I'm part of an organization, I will still use we as a pronoun. That should be our team purpose for Agile software development. Flexibility is our key point with Agile, and everything can be done in modifications. What can we learn from the previous sprint that happened? Our retrospective should be a time to sit down and figure out what we can learn. Then we also have what's called guesstimates. So the team developers sit down and basically guess how long each feature or epic or story, our user story, takes and how long they think it's going to take, and then it will evolve from there. So that's our Agile and our Scrum and our sprints, they're called. So that's a kind of it's also a good tool for communication as our team grows. There are certain people that take kind of leaves out of that book and then evolve and use other types of Agile software development as well, and others that just use the core part, and they are Scrum masters. They adhere to it very much, and that's all well and good as well. So I'm a big proponent of using Agile software development, mainly for keeping a team motivated, to build team trust, to also build better communication when it is psychologically safe. So Google released a research on being psychologically safe in an organization, and if you're not psychologically safe, usually the team Scrum meetings might be very silent. If it's a highly critical environment. So I would probably stay away from Scrum in those types of environments where it's very hard line and push in that regard. But if it's in a growth mindset environment where it's flexible, where you're growing all the time, a lot of startups are using Agile software development. And that's one of the reasons, is because you're growing and the focus is always on improvement, on showing how you can work as a team. There's a lot more we focused. And that also leads me into documentation. So while documentation can be a little bit of a pain for a lot of developers, the reason why it's so important isn't for other people. Actually, it's for a selfish reason, if you think about it. So the reason why a lot of people write documentation, including myself, isn't to do with other people. Usually it's more to do with, if somebody comes to me with a question and it's my 30th time explaining, then of course I'm going to write some documentation to do with this. If after writing the documentation, if people are still asking questions, even after writing the documentation, I need to take responsibility for that documentation. I need to say, there's something up with my documentation. I need to improve that documentation and how it's written, because they're still coming to me with questions. So the reason why I'm saying it's a little bit selfish on my part, or the people who do write, and it's great because it saves me the frustration. So it keeps the frustration at an all-time low when I write good documentation. Also, another layer to this, if we're working as a good team, it's actually amazing if you have documentation that works well, that reads well, that has screenshots in it, that has a specific thing highlighted in it, that is easy to understand and read well. And the reason is because I'm a team player, but also when I have it all well written and done out, I should be able to leave the organization and someone else can come in and pick it up from where I left off. Now, normally in technology, there's a rule of thumb in a lot of industry places that you stay in a job for 2 years and then you move on to the next job, unless you're in a good company which adopts a growth mindset. When you have a growth mindset in an organization, then you're continuing to grow, you have your improvements, you can grow within personally in the organization as personal career growth, and you can continue to evolve and take on new responsibilities, but also learn new technologies and grow as a developer. So if you're in an organization, usually that you have done all of your growth and have started to become a little bit stagnant, then of course that also leads to, okay, I'm finished growing here, then I need to move on to the next one. If you're in an organization that is growing and continue to grow and open to hearing feedback from employees as well, that's your growth mindset. That's your, okay, not just open to hearing it, they can hear it, and if they're not listening, if they're not adopting your ideas or your ways of working, or maybe not this type of way of working, maybe they talk to you in a certain way that they say, okay, look, we'll try it in the next project. That's also tying into agile software development. So communication is a key role in this. So that is our bonus content video for today. That is the reason why documentation is so important. That is also why the introduction to kind of agile software development in a very little nutshell, just off the top of my head from my experience as well. And next time I will bring out the research, the theory behind a lot of agile. It's a big topic. But yeah, that's a brief overview just from the experience side of my life. Also, the reason why documentation is so important from the experience side of my life. Big red flag if you're starting an organization and they say all of the documentation is in the code. Red flag. Red flag. Or we keep documentation to a minimum. Red flag. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful. That is just my experience from my working, and I hope you continue to document your lovely, beautiful code and keep it clean. Keep your code clean. So repeat after me, like I say in the previous videos for this beginner series in 2022. Programming comes to me easily and effortlessly. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to the next one. Okay, thanks, bye.